Yes, we are back, boys! Let's go! Hey guys, we are back to Swishcast episode. I don't give a fuck, man. We are getting straight into it. Alright,
welcome everybody to Swishcast, the only Team Fortress 2 podcast, the only good one anyway. Today we're joined by a very special guest, but before that, you know who you're really here for, me. So my name's Indy. I'm all the way on the right, on the left. To the right of me is Party Pug TV. Say hello. And to the right of him is
sure, you know yourself.
Yeah.
We've got Irish cunt.
Diddly out eye day.
We found in like the slums of Dublin. Alright, and he's got
Slums.
We have a very, very special guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself for the stream?
What's up, everybody? I am UEAK Crash, which I have to point out. I have to immediately dunk on you guys that you misspelled my name in the little image.
On the stream. Okay.
Hardy, I said it to you about a million times. I literally spelled it.
You said it to me out loud. You didn't send me a spelling.
It's really difficult, but I just want to point that out.
I literally said this to him.
What is it?
He asked, oh, what's his name? And I go, or how do you spell the name? And I go, UEAK Crash, and he still fucked it up.
Wait, hang on.
Okay, but yeah, anyway, I am UEAK Crash. I've been making maps for probably 13, 14 years now for TF2. I've got a bunch of maps that are in game that you might know of. Probed was one of my earlier ones. I worked on Moonshine Event. Most recently, I did Slime, which just got in. I got a bunch of them that I've helped out in little ways, and I've always got my hands kind of in everybody's projects and helping people out and solving problems. And if you've learned mapping in the last like 8 years or so, you've probably used my tutorial series as well on YouTube.
I fixed it, by the way.
Thank you.
If you know anything about mapping, you're likely to have heard of the guy. You know what I'm saying?
He is made.
You've probably dealt with me talking way too fast for the first couple episodes of my tutorial series. And...
I remember, mapping is for the strong-willed, because I remember when did these tutorials come out? Like 10 years ago now?
I think it's 8 or 9 years now.
I remember when they first came out, I was like, you know what? I will learn mapping. And then halfway through the first tutorial, I was like, I ain't doing this.
So it's actually really funny if you look at the view count. The very first episode is like really, really high up there, and then the second episode is like a third of that. Like everybody, you see what you're getting into, and you're like, oh, never mind, screw that. But I will say, the whole reason I made that tutorial series is when I got into mapping, it was so incredibly hard. Because you had resources everywhere. Half of it was text, some of it was videos that were about different games. You learned a lot about like Counter-Strike mapping. There was like Top Hat Waffle and God, what's the other guy? Clicks Phillip. I'm forgetting the start of his name, but Three Clicks Phillip. I learned from them, but there was no kind of center source for TF2 mapping, so I made my tutorial series so people would have what I wish I had when I started.
So when you started mapping, what you got your information from like CS:GO mappers and just like text forms, was it?
Yeah, there was like the Valve developer wiki, which is just the driest possible read. It's like, this is the entity and this is what it does, and this is the things that are broken about it. Here you go, figure it out. And then there's the TF2 maps tutorials and guides that talked about layout ideas and general stuff. There's a lot of resources, but it was just scattered everywhere, and nothing that was so specifically TF2 focused that I decided to make what I wished I had. And I feel like, and I've heard from a lot of people, that I lowered the bar of entry for mapping for TF2 like an insane amount. And there's people who have maps in game who started with my tutorial series, which is cool, but also I'm like, man, that could have been me too. Like,
Would you say before you invented your tutorial series that you needed to have a Miyagi teacher to guide you through the mapping process?
It was sort of like that. Like, I actually kind of did. I started off. I was part of the Penny Arcade TF2 server kind of circle that we had, and it was based around the Penny Arcade forums, the webcomic. Yeah. So that started with TF2's launch. There was like 3 or 4 servers. There was a couple running stock maps, and then there was the House of Nonconformity, which is ran by my buddy PM Avers, and he ran custom maps. And I was seeing these custom maps. It was the early days of TF2, and the first custom maps that were coming out, like Garbage Day, and like these very, very early ones. and he was constantly uploading them, and you know, we're trying out new stuff every week, and it got me really interested. Like, hey, there's this whole scene of people making maps and doing all this kind of cool stuff. And then another regular from the server, Hey You, who you might know of, he's the original creator of Moonshine. We did Stony Ridge together, which turned into Spooky Ridge, which got in the game. He's done a bunch of stuff. Last year he did oh god, I'm drawing a blank on the name. The dinosaur map that was really popular, but it didn't get in the game. I'm terrible for not knowing.
With like the
Extinction.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. It has like the big skeleton set piece.
Yeah, exactly. He ended up kind of taking me under his wing, and I learned he was sort of my Mr. Miyagi in that sense. I learned a lot from him, and then we started Stony Ridge, and it was kind of like I saw how his workflow was. I learned a bunch of like really, really important lessons about mapping from him working on that project, and I got to see a project from start to finish, all the way up to like release candidate, fully detailed. And then it also allowed me to do little bits and pieces, so I was like doing some of the detailing and some of the gameplay and some of the optimization. I got my hands, you know, kind of deep into all the aspects of it, and I got to see how a project would get finished. And that's probably my superpower of mapping more than anything, is that I can actually finish projects. There's so many maps that don't get out of alpha, don't get out of beta, and you know, don't get a full release. And my secret power is that I just can commit really hard and finish them.
Take notes, Blender users. All right, you go.
Did you ever have this is the last Miyagi question. Did you ever have a wax on, wax off moment where
What are you saying?
where it all just made sense?
We're very pro karate kid.
I think probably the number one lesson that I got from Hey You, and that's something I try to pass on a lot too, even like today. I still, you know, in the last month I've used this lesson, was knowing when to scrap work and start over. And that was kind of the moment of like, okay, do you really want a sunk cost fallacy into making a map bad? Or do you want to take what you learned from this big section of a map, completely flip it on its end, redo something, and make it better? And that's like I just recently did. I've been working on a map, CP payload hybrid map. So it's like one stage is control point, the next stage is payload. It's called Yava.
That sounds crazy.
And the second stage, it took me a really long time. I was about 2/3 of the way through building it. And I was like, this is absolutely insanely huge. This is way too big. And I started comparing it to other maps, and I realized I basically made a stage 2 map that was the equivalent of Upward, like the entirety of Upward. And that would be after a first stage. So I was like, okay, this is not going to work. I know it's not going to work, but I have to choose now. Do I go forward, keep building it, see what works, what doesn't work, and then fix it? Or do I completely scrap it and start over? So I actually chose to keep going, knowing that I was going to scrap like the entire second stage, but I wanted to learn from what I had put into it before I did that. So I ended up completely, I tested it out. It was obviously way too big, but there was a bunch of cool gameplay elements that I liked. So I went back in, I deleted the entire second stage and started over from scratch, using that as kind of a template, and the parts that I liked and the parts that I didn't like got rid of, and just shortened it all up. And I'm kind of nearing the end of that whole process of rebuilding it. It's kind of taken me about 3 months to probably rebuild it, but it had to happen. And that's a really, really important thing that you have to learn mapping, is when to cut your losses.
One thing I'm wondering about mapping is, like, you know, unlike like a 3D model or a drawing or a video, when you like put a lot of effort into something and then you have to scrap it. Let's say you build a huge section of a map and then you have to scrap the whole thing. Isn't it like really complicated to like just delete a whole chunk of like a 3D space and then have to like stitch it together? Is that like more trouble than it's worth, or like how does that work?
It can be. It's actually like when I started off most recently with Yavla, I was like, okay, maybe I can just shrink things down and I can like delete chunks of the track and squeeze it all together. And I did that for like a night, I think. And I was like, this is such a tangled puzzle of brushwork, and it's such a mess. I'm like, it's going to be faster for me to completely delete it and rebuild it than it would be to try to fix what is here. And it honestly, I would be hurting the overall project if I hadn't just completely scrapped it and redid it. So it can be tough for sure. But there's also times where everything lines up kind of nice. You just look at the top-down view, just click, drag, select, and hit delete. That was the majority of what I did when I decided to scrap it and rebuild it, because luckily the stage 2 was kind of divided off from the first stage well enough that I could do that. But it can be tough for sure. I know another good example of that is I did the map Shore Leave, which was the big frontline project. And the last on that, I think I documented that with like a changelog video series, but the last on that was just the first iteration of it was just atrocious, and I was not happy with it. It wasn't satisfying. It had like the frontier split spawn rooms, and like I was taking too much influence from that, and I just didn't like it. And I ended up scrapping the whole last, and I made a new last, which was 1,000 times better, and I'm so happy that I decided to do that, and it wasn't too bad of a change. And in the end, if I would have committed to that crappier version, the map would be so much worse. So it was worth the time commitment lost.
I would say that the not getting into this like sunk, I don't know what way you'd put it, not getting into this like sunk cost fallacy type thing.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's a really good skill to have if you're in anything, let
Yeah.
alone mapping, which takes like
It's a life
I
skill for sure, because it's like even
yeah.
a job. Like if you're working at a job that you hate, it might be hard. It might be a lot of work to start over from scratch and like get a different job and start. You put 10 years into a job or something, and it's not what you want. It's going to suck to start over, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. And the sooner you get to it, the better it is.
Yeah, but even like the advice you gave of like, don't just treat everything you've done as like scrap it all, see what worked, and then
Yeah.
take that and build upon it rather than just I like that's not a way of thinking about, like, this applies to not just mapping but like even like content creation and stuff like that. That's a way of thinking about things that I haven't really thought of before. Like, most of the time I'm kind of a bit of a bitch for this. If I like don't like I started working on video and I don't like it, I will just kind of push it through to the end. I've done it once or twice, but I like, as you said, what it probably would have been better to do is find out what was good about the video, or even like, just did I do anything cool with the editing or something, and just fucking apply that to a better video.
There's usually
Sometimes
something
just like
self-
taking a step back and looking at like the whole can really, really help, and that'll let you know if you should keep going with it or if you need to scrap a bunch of stuff and make it better.
I did go ahead, Party.
It might be a little bit off topic. No, not kind of, because I had like a really funny question about that was related to mapping and like source programs. Unless you had something you wanted to add, Sam.
No, I was gonna move on slightly to.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Okay. I've got to right out of all the source programs that you have to learn, or you don't have to learn, but you can learn, like SFM, fucking like Face Poser or whatever. Where would you say Hammer lies on the difficulty scale?
It's like the program itself isn't bad in the grand scheme, like compared to other level design tools. If you're talking like the Unreal Editor and Unity, like as an iterative level design program, it's actually one of the best ones out there.
Really?
The problem lies with the source engine itself, and that it's so old, and it's, as everybody knows, the spaghetti code behind it.
Yeah.
You'll run into the most ridiculous problems and have to sit there and figure out how to fix it. Compared to other source related programs, I would say it's about the same, because I've messed around with Source Filmmaker a bit, not a ton, like animating stuff like that, but from what I've seen of other people doing it, it's got just as much jank as Hammer.
Well, I've been using SFM. I've got like it's my like main program, I guess, aside from like editing, and I've been using it for ages. And I remember, I don't know, it was a really long time ago. Like I might have been like 16, but I tried to get into mapping, and I like had like a heart attack trying to understand all. Maybe if I tried it now, I'd probably have a better time. But I always thought Hammer is like this extremely difficult program. Is that like do you think that stigma is like warranted, or do you think it needs to be broken?
I think it has a bit of a stigma as being like this big scary thing. It's because there's so much coming at you at once when you're trying to learn, because it's not just the program, but it's all the rules behind the source engine. It's all the things like the actual program itself is relatively easy. It's just all the rules you have to learn to actually make a functional map. That's the hard part. And it's like a big steep learning curve, but once you kind of get the basics down of the program, then it levels off quite a bit, and then it's a slow climb. I'm still learning stuff 13, 14 years later now about the engine and about how to make stuff. There's probably very few streams that I do of mapping that someone's like, hey, how come you don't just do this like keyboard shortcut, and I'm like, that's a thing? I can do that? I've been missing this the entire time. Like,
the students are becoming the teachers.
yeah,
that is
no, 100%.
like that's fucking that applies to like all those old even in SFM, like I didn't start using like a Fulbright until like I don't know how many hours I have in SFM, but I didn't start using Fulbright till about like 5 months ago. Like they bury things where you just cannot like find them or something, or maybe I'm just stupid and like completely missed it. I don't know.
I will say we've been really, really fortunate. Like when I first started mapping, the tools for mapping for TF2 were just absolutely not there. Like you had Hammer and you had these like early packing programs. It was really rough. You had to like everything was manual. So like if I wanted to release a map, the whole process was like compiling the map. Then you had to load the map up, manually type in a whole bunch of commands to pack the cube map so all the reflections worked on it. Then you had to use another program to pack everything. Then you had to use another program to compress it. So there was like 4 different programs you were using just to release a map. And now we have tools like CompilePal, which I literally just set the map in. I have all my settings. It does every single step of the way for me. I just hit compile, and in the end, I have a map that is release ready. And then the same with like Hammer is just absolute game changer for my workflow personally. Because you can see lighting previews in Hammer, which is insane. That's not a thing. The first decade that I've been doing mapping, you had to put your lights in and kind of guess how they were going to look, compile it, and then see what they actually look like. And there was so much time wasted just waiting on that cycle of compiling. And if you get to like a fully finished map, it'd take 45 minutes to an hour to compile. You're doing a bunch of changes, compiling, loading it up in game, looking around, taking notes, going back in, making a bunch of changes, and now it's literally a push of a button in Hammer to say like preview lighting, and it's not 100%, but it's very close.
And it's not really too much of a surprise now that I'm thinking about it that a lot of early like custom TF2 maps were things like DM Duel, CP Orange.
I love DM Duel.
DM Duel, which was just like a hole in the ground, like no lighting, nothing.
It's just like a hole, but it's good.
It was. I will admit that a lot of my hours in 2013 were on DM Duel.
It's kind of funny because we mappers joke around a lot about CP Orange, because it's like people are putting quite literally hundreds, if not thousands, of hours into these big projects, these like massive, beautiful projects that are coming out these days for TF2. And ultimately, the most popular maps are like the most basic idle projects, and like one room with the room in the middle.
You can never be Trade Plaza.
And then exactly. And then CP Orange is the most popular custom map out there. And then if you do make a standard stock map styled project, still like CTF2 for it is just being DM'd in for 90% of the crowd.
I was gonna ask. I'm not exactly educated on these things. Hammer is that a fan made thing, or is that how's that? What's up with that?
Yeah, it's actually Cool is the person who made it. Just a very, very smart programmer who knows a lot about the source engine. And they made this very, very useful version of Hammer that has a lot of quality of life upgrades to it. Most notably is the lighting preview, which I cannot, like, the amount of hours of my life I have wasted waiting for compiles to look at lighting and just hitting a button, and it takes like 5 seconds. It's mind-blowing being like an old school mapper who's been around for a long time to see this change.
Indeed. All right, imagine you're doing an SFM thumbnail, right? But you had to like light it with like whatever DAG utilities, but you could only see the lighting after you rendered it. Could you imagine
render that?
Yeah,
I think I would go insane.
I would actually like want to like
that would not.
No.
No,
I would say hell no.
Hell no. Of my mapping career, exactly that.
I would literally say hell no and just like commission someone else to do it. I'd be like, I'm dealing with this.
I do like I'd like tone map scale the fucking render.
No, don't do that.
Well, I'd say we can like kind of move on a bit to.
Yeah, well, this is just the intro, by the way. We actually have topics.
Yeah. So
You can get me going. I can talk a lot. I'm used to this stuff.
Yeah,
That's good. Some of our guests aren't. They usually go like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think majority of them like open.
Yeah,
Even
no.
the like quiet ones open up after the introductions, but
yeah.
sometimes it's like
it's okay, guys. I don't think they're watching. It's all right.
No, it's a very rare that we have a super quiet guest. We have to like prod to speak.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think so. One of the next topic we were going to go on to is what, in your mind, makes a map good for TF2? Like, what is your design philosophy for it? What do you differentiate between good maps and bad maps and stuff like that?
I think like the most basic level is height variation. A lot of, especially like newer people who are first making a map, they'd make a big room and they fill it with stuff. It's just like the box. It's kind of like if you think Harvest is a giant room and then there's just some buildings and a building in the middle, and the whole map itself is super flat. Obviously, that's a successful map, so it does work. It can work, but I think what separates a really good map from a bad map is just that height variation and that difference, giving each class something it can do. The jumping classes have abilities to get up higher to places that other classes won't necessarily have that ability. And I think that adds a lot of dynamics. It's what makes TF2 TF2 is all the classes having different abilities. And that's height variation kind of emphasizes that.
Well, I feel like Harvest is a really good example of height variation.
I think a better example would be Junction. Like, can we be honest for a second?
Oh, please. Made by the same guy, by the way.
I can't believe that.
I can't believe that, because like Harvest is one of my favorite maps ever. You were talking about height variation and like scouts, soldiers, like all the movement classes.
Oh yeah. And that's kind of what works about it, is that they did put buildings in, but the problem is a lot of people see that and go, okay, I just make a big space and I fill it with stuff. And then if that stuff isn't changing the height in dramatic ways, it can lead to like a not that fun project.
But do you think it can get to the point where you've gone too far? Like you've added too much? Like where the map is like, more vertical than it is horizontal, that type of thing. Or does it not really cap out? Like, does it?
No, there's definitely a limit. Like Higher Tower, I assume you've seen.
Yeah, I think that might be
my favorite map.
Oh, so good! I'll play to win on that map.
there's fall off of damage. So as people are further away and they hit you, their damage does less. Like splash damage from soldiers, their rocket does less past a certain point. So if you start having height variation past that point, you're basically just chipping away at each other from a distance instead of actually having like a fun gameplay space. That said, I've always been like a rule breaker when it comes to maps. Like early on, I was told like a lot of people were like, players shouldn't be fighting your map. So I made Trainsaw Laser. That was one of my early projects.
I remember that map when I was like playing like 2016.
And then like it was also like maps should have low visual noise, so I made wub wub wub. I've always wanted to see, like, I want to break these rules and I want to see how far I can get it and do that. So I've been working on a project called Payload Blocked lately, and the entire middle area is this big elevator that you have to push the payload card up, and it's got really, really significant height differences to it in that area. But that said, there's things that aren't working about it, and there's things that are. A big issue is that players don't look up. We always say like players are dogs, they don't look up. So you could have something that's right above their head and they're not going to notice it unless you force them to look up. And that's kind of, I've been joking that this map is training players to look up a little bit more than they would normally be used to.
They actually don't though. Like, do you know that there's a load of Steel, my favorite map.
I do like Steel. That's one of my favorites as well.
Thank you. Oh my god, these two hate Steel.
I don't hate Steel. I just don't. I don't think it's great.
It's just
they're allowed to be wrong. It's okay.
All right. Let's calm down.
It's just a longer Dust Bowl.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, we're not having.
We're gonna have the Steel debate.
Beautifully made. It is a masterclass in gameplay.
We will have this discussion later. Anyway, there's a load of hiding spots on Steel that you can get to as Scout, like just corners. And you like literally if you just tilted your character's head up like not even 90 degrees, just like 40 degrees up, you'd be the most obvious thing ever, but nobody does it, and the amount of kills you get from it is fucking insane. It's that's why I love. That's one of the reasons I love that map. Yeah.
But how do you go about making players look up? Is there Miyagi? Okay, I need to stop.
Can
Is
you
there, are
stop
there
with the fuck-
techniques?
okay, just give a bit of context.
There's a lot of things you can do. Visual cues, lighting cues. You want to open it up big enough that they get the broader scheme from further away.
Monoculous boss fight.
But it's tough. It's very, very difficult too. They're a really good example too. This is kind of related to looking up, but players are very stubborn about things that they're used to doing. I had a map a long time ago. I think it was just called Payload Crash. It was a work in progress project that I was doing. But it had this big U-shaped section of the map that you had to push this payload cart, and then it would connect back, and the door was locked. That was it was like you went across the U shape, and then there was a door that connected both ends of the U, if that makes sense. And after you captured the point past that U shape, that door would unlock. So now everybody was used to going straight, and now suddenly they can go to the left. There's a big door that opens up. And players still wanted to go straight, and they went around this big giant U bend. They didn't have to, and they were like, this is way too long of a run. This map sucks. So I put signs that popped up and visually directed them to go to the left, and it didn't help a ton. So I got frustrated, and I put like a bunch of signs that popped up and blocked your way. You could not, like, you had to walk around them. And in testing, they walked around them. They saw these signs. They went, okay, this is an arrow pointing my way. Why is this in my way? I'm going where I want to go. So you can't just necessarily direct with like arrows and signage. There's a certain flow to maps. And I'm still working on it, to be honest. It's not a finalized project by any means.
I think
there's a lot of issues, but we're getting there.
I think there is a thing is too many arrows. I don't know if you've played Hydro any time in the last decade, but
Yeah.
those arrows are like disorienting.
Where do I go?
I think there's actually like I don't know, like, do you know when you see something so much that you just kind of forget it's there? Like it's like a proven thing. Like guards looking at security cameras don't notice what they're looking at anymore, so they don't notice if there's something dangerous there. It's the same with TF2, but with arrows and signposts. I feel like people have been playing certain maps for so long that they just completely disregard them. So then when you get like a new payload map and stuff, even though there are clear arrows showing you bread space, it always happened on bread space when that map first came out. Everybody would, like, the defenders would get out of spawn and then start walking to last. There was an arrow right in their face, but they just, like, I don't know what about it, but they just completely disregarded it.
I did that just last month.
I think if you have new players constantly walking to like the wrong side of the map, it might be a sign that something has got a little bit wrong.
I think
it's a map issue. Like, honestly, it's flow of the map. You want to direct kind of like the angle of how they're coming out of the spawn room. There's so many little subtle things that you don't quite realize. Like a spawn door could be straight one direction, but if you're angled 45 degrees coming at it, you're going to want to continue going in that direction when you come out of that door. And little things like that can make a really big difference in general, showing players where they're supposed to go.
Something I've always wondered with mappers on payload maps is why don't you just like close off the area that you're not supposed to be in? Like if the game has just started, why can I walk to payload last? Why is that like not just like gated off, honestly?
A big issue with that is some of that space is used for like spies get back there.
Yeah.
When you're trying, you can. There's certain things you can block off, but there's always issues with trying to dynamically change areas on the fly like that. Like, let's say you want to close off an area that is done, like the back area, like you've pushed past the first 3 points on a payload map. You close off the first 2. Well, now there's a enemy engineer with a teleporter back there that's stuck, or there's a player that got lost and now they're stuck back there, and they're even more frustrated than had they been just found the way back. There's things you can do, but it's generally difficult to do it do it without introducing a bunch of other problems.
You've got to be careful, Indy, when like with how much you block off, because like I feel like a bit like if you block off too much, how are we gonna get some those epic ninja-neering montages? Like, come on.
That is true.
How do you think about
How
it?
could I be so foolish?
One thing that hates that even with the best maps, there's something that always annoys me is when I'm like rocket jumping around as soldier, and you think, and there's like a roof on a building, and you think, oh, it's like pretty, it's like not that high up, you can probably jump on that, and then you jump way over it, and you slam into an invisible wall.
Yeah.
It's a really tough balance because you don't want, like, visually having too much vertical space around you makes you feel kind of claustrophobic. If you think like Dust Bowl, you go through like that narrow hallway, like the final corner before last there, and it's just like these giant buildings on either side of you. If I'm thinking the right map, I'm so bad with map names, honestly. But it has this like overwhelming feeling of claustrophobia, and you try to avoid that, but you also want to indicate where you can't go. So it's kind of a balance.
Yeah, because like, if you have like there's like that one version of Hightower that like removes every invisible wall, and then there's like people killing you from the most ridiculous fucking places, like and, like sticky camp, spawn camping like the most annoying spots. So
You like
there
take
obviously
the
is a balance.
teleporter and you're like in the background scenery.
Yeah, like oh, that's like there is a limit, obviously, but I feel like a good
Yeah.
map strikes the perfect balance of I can jump around I can jump on roofs, I'm like jumping, and I'm like I feel like I'm in the game world, and obviously not slamming into invisible walls every 2 seconds.
I'm definitely of the mindset I try to keep things open as much as possible, because even if there's like this really tall roof, how beneficial is it to be up there? How, I'd rather leave something open than not as much as I can. Like, actually, a good example of this is we were just playing Probed pretty recently on my testing server, and somebody jumped up on a roof and they were like, "You can get up here?" I had been playing this map for since 2015. I had no idea this roof was accessible this entire time, and it was like, it's accessible, but it's not super handy, so it doesn't come into play that often.
Yeah, so if it's not really a problem, I don't see why you should close it off. I feel like just like keeping the maps free, like the freedom to explore, as long as it's like guiding you in the right direction and not allowing for like epic Delphi exploits, then
The thing. Oh, go ahead.
Something I always liked what Overwatch did with its maps, funnily enough, was having like gated off like high up areas be like really slippery. I don't know if any of you have played Overwatch, but like if you're in like a high up area, that instead of putting an invisible wall, they just make the floor like incredibly slippery, so you're bound to slip off of it after like half a second. Is that like not possible in Hammer, or is that just like not been tried or doesn't work?
It's possible. I've actually done it on the map Wub Wub Wub. Funny enough, there's like the whole big roof area that when the map, the roof blows off at the beginning, and it's all low gravity, so there's a very high likelihood that someone's going to jump up onto this roof, but the whole thing just shoves you back onto the map if you land on the roof. And the idea was that the map was like in space, so I was like, well, it's weird physics, sure, that shoves you off. And it's difficult to get away with it in a normal map because there's certain things people expect out of maps, and if it's like a certain angle roof, you're expected to be able to either stand on it or even like surf on it potentially. And if I have something shoving you off of it, then it's going to not feel natural based on the entirety of TF2's history.
Right. It's a bit late to change stuff now, I guess.
Sort of, yeah. Like you can. There's definitely like I have unblocked. I've got an elevator that goes up. And the problem with elevators is like if a player interacts with a wall, and they're getting squished between the elevator and the wall, then it's either going to kill them or it's going to jam the elevator or it's going to make them stuck or something. There's a million different issues with that kind of thing. So I ended up putting like this wedge and a push trigger that shoves you onto the elevator more, because the wedge itself is just going to make you stuck, because Source Engine, it would be way too convenient if it just worked. So now there's a push trigger that kind of pushes you back on, but it's like a balance of finding the right force without breaking certain things. And, if you don't have everything ticked right, if you shoot a rocket into that push trigger, it's going to launch the rocket in a different direction. And like, there's so many different variables that you have to get just right. And if it's a tiny little area in the map.
Something I really wanted to ask. Sorry, Sam, am I interrupting?
No, I actually can't remember what I was gonna say.
Well done, Samuel.
Something I really wanted to ask is is there like a couple things that differentiate a good map from a really good map? Like is there things that just like immediately jumped up to you like, yeah, this would be a great map if they only did like this small thing or something like that?
I think a big thing that a lot of mappers are scared of is choke points. Like you hear a lot of complaining from players like this map's too choky, but they're really, really handy in like gameplay. Like setting a front line. Like if you think about some of the best like earliest maps, like they were just absolutely packed full of choke points. And modern TF2 is kind of leaned more towards opening maps up more, making them more you can go anywhere, you can get around things, any spot you're gonna have 3 different paths to go. But I'm personally of the belief that a good solid choke point can really make or break a map. Obviously, it's possible to break it as well. It goes both directions. But I think finding the balance of how to use them and making them not too brutal, that can really set apart like a good map from a really good map, in my opinion.
I think every map does need like a choke point. It's just that a lot of maps have them like come in like really abruptly. I think a good example that comes to mind is the Jungle Inferno Valve map. What's that one called, Indy? Mercenary Park.
Mercenary Park.
Yeah,
Mercenary Park,
yeah, because like that one, like the first point on that is really good. It starts out like it's like looks beautiful. It's like there's tons of area to like jump around in. It's got these crocodiles. You can like jump around on the like the top of like the railings. So good. But then I think by the end of it, you're in that like one cramped like door you have to push through, and that is like a nightmare. Like there's barely any like play except you just have to like like headstrong, just like charge through it.
It's kind of like a big like triangle shape that map. It just gets narrower and narrower as you go down.
Which is it's a shame.
But that is actually something I got feedback from Valve about one of my maps that still hasn't gotten in game. I'm hoping eventually, but Overgrown, CP Overgrown that I did. I talked to them a little bit about it, and it was like a really close runner-up for the jungle update, I guess, but it didn't quite fit the theme exactly how they wanted, and there were some gameplay issues. And one of the things I got is that they didn't have a real good defined front line, and that it was missing like this middle transitionary area between the first and second point was just there was too much map there. It was too many ways to go. There was a whole basement area before that you could go into, and it was way too much map. So I've been trying to kind of pull back a little bit lately with my newer projects, and go a little bit more old school with my mapping and kind of narrow things down and make more chokes and make more single real big defined route and maybe a smaller minor route to take the next area. And I'm finding that's helping quite a bit. It helps the flow of the map, and it feels like an older map. I get a lot of people who are like, wow, this feels like a early TF2 map mixed with some modern stuff, and that's what I've been going for lately.
Yeah, I think what is it with maps? It's like if you have them too open, like the whole team just like spreads out, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
and it kind of makes pushing like as a team really hard. So it's definitely a balance. You make them too closed in though, then everyone just starts playing like heavy and like demo. So it's like it's really is about finding that balance, and it's a lot harder than you would imagine, especially.
Very, yeah.
Since you mentioned Jungle Inferno, I was thinking about that map and the way it looks and how it's supposed to be. Since you mentioned Mercenary Park, sorry, and it's like it's supposed to be this mercenary park, but all you see is like a big warehouse that just kind of like, and so it leads to my question, like, how important are like aesthetics really? Because all we've been touching on is like building the map itself, like geometry wise, and we touched a little bit on like pointers like arrows and stuff, but how important is like making the map look good? Like how is that on the totem pole?
I should preface this with I'm primarily a gameplay mapper. Like a lot of the projects that I've worked on, I was like the gameplay person, and I brought somebody else in for detailing. Like I've worked with Freya quite a bit. She did Moss Rock, Sulfur. She did all the detailing on Shore Leave with me. We've worked together a bunch. We did an Oasis event. Those were 2 projects that she did the detailing on. She's absolutely amazing detailer. And there's always a balance. You don't want to over detail things. There's a lot of gameplay kind of elements that come into detailing that, like, if something's very heavily detailed, that should be an area that you're focusing on. Like a control point should have a lot of detailing around it to kind of draw your eye in. But I think it's aesthetically you can get away with a lot. But if you really just knock it out of the park, it can really, really add to the perception of your map. So it's a balance. Like you obviously you want it to play really good, the best you can. You can take a map that plays sort of so-so and polish it up a ton, and people are going to potentially really like it, even though the gameplay isn't as good as it maybe could be or compared to other maps. But it visually looks really cool. It's a whole new area to kind of look at. I'm real big on like kind of pushing themes and new ideas and stuff like that. And I think that helps a lot for the community to see these new things, and it improves their perception of the map, I guess is what I'm saying.
I can think of loads of maps that are like have like really good aesthetics that I'm like, oh my god, this map is beautiful. Then when I sit down and play it, I'm like bum lost. And then I can also think of the maps that are like have like barely any aesthetic at all except like dusty, and then they actually, when you sit and play them, it's actually like really fun and well done. I think
they're very, very different like concepts to have to learn is detailing and gameplay. And I've personally focused more on gameplay, and there's some other people that have focused more on detailing, and you kind of end up like Probed is not that pretty of a map, but that's the one that I detailed. But the gameplay is really solid in my opinion, but it's got the visuals are kind of simple, and it's nothing that crazy, but it sells it enough that it works. And then of course I'm a big gimmick mapper. I like to add lots of weird little shenanigans to my map, so that helped as well. The aliens that teleport in and all that kind of stuff.
When you said you are normally focused more on the gameplay side, when you start a map, I assume you have do you have an idea of what the aesthetic is going to be when you start, or is it just like I build it around the geometry for like how the map is going to play first and then worry about the aesthetic later?
It's absolutely the aesthetic ideas there first. I need some kind of base to start from. Like if you're just like make a gameplay map and it's like, where do I start? Like I need something to start with, some kind of concept. It's really difficult to just be like gameplay, nothing else, no other ideas.
It's like being told to be funny now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, give me a topic at least.
Be funny. Say something funny now.
Yeah. So generally, I come into it and it's like when I started Shore Leave, we had the really defined like frontline theme that we wanted. So I was like, okay, so I know it's going to be like an urban war kind of torn area. I've been really fascinated with like a beach landing kind of map. So it started off with like a boat that you came off of and ended up turning into like a lighthouse and stuff like that for gameplay reasons. But I knew, so like, okay, right there, it's going to be a lot of uphill at the very beginning. So that feeds that already. It's going to be open, but there's going to be, different kind of elements to it. As you're climbing up the hill, it's going to get narrower going through the city. I need lots of taller buildings to kind of help define that. I'm going to be going through a big building of some sort. We didn't quite know what that big building was going to be, but we knew it had to be something big, so it ended up being like a brewery or some sort of warehouse. And then it opens up and it's like a city center, so there's going to be a fountain and a statue and a big, building in the background that didn't need to be there when I was doing the gameplay, but it helps sell the idea later on. So absolutely, like if you are struggling to come up with gameplay ideas, settling on a theme and settling on a big gimmick that you want to apply, like say you want to make a map around a dam. Right there, you get a ton of ideas for this kind of height variation. Are you going to be up on the dam? Is the dam going to be next to you? Is the gameplay going to be up there at all? Are you going to be jumping down? Are you not going to be jumping down? Like, it gives you those questions. Having some limitations on what you're going to make is what breeds creativity.
What?
Has it ever happened though that like the gameplay section has actually impeded the aesthetic section? Like have you ever like put something in a map or like something that's a bit odd, and then whoever's doing the aesthetics for the map is like, I have no idea what to put here, what fits in this situation? Or is that
absolutely 100%? There's a lot of times where I make really weird shapes. I've gotten better at it over the years, but like my mapping partner Freya that I've worked with a ton, we always have this like really funny friendship as we're working on projects where I'll be building something and I'll make this and I'll iterate it a bunch and I'll be like, okay, the gameplay's ready. Here's the detailing. And then she is just furious at me for a month straight where she's like, what the hell were you thinking putting this in here? What am I supposed to do with this shape? What is this building? But she always comes out with something amazing. And I'm like, you got this. Don't worry. But we have this hilarious back and forth where she's furious at me and then she passes it back and I'm like, what did you do to my gameplay and the optimization? You ruined the map. And she's like, fucking deal with it. I made it look really cool. And then I have to fix it. And we're constantly this back and forth. And then we're like, okay, that map's pretty cool in the end.
Damn. heavy tension in the mapping scene, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But you know, I was gonna say, some of the most beautiful maps I've ever seen aren't even like what you would expect. I've actually seen some incredibly beautiful maps on just like trade servers because they don't have to. I guess it's because they're not like bound by an objective. If you know what I
get
mean.
away with a
Trade
lot more, for
Minecraft.
sure.
Not trade
Trade-
Minecraft.
It brought me
Trade
to
Minecraft.
tears.
No, I always think of that boat one, Indy. Do you remember I don't remember what it's called, but it was. This boat.
I don't remember. There's this like a giant like cruise ship that's like perfectly TF2 themed, and it has so many like
Custom
cool
textures.
like and like cool details and everything. But it's literally just a cruise ship. Like there's no
objective or anything, but it's like a beautifully done like cruise ship that looks amazing. It has tons of like custom TF2 style textures, and it has like all these like mini like personalized ads for like TF2 like related like companies they've just come up with, and I'm like, what the hell?
It looks like something you'd see in like the comics or Expiration Date or something.
Yeah, but it's just a trade map. It's just like a people just like
yeah.
there's not. So yeah, I don't know what it's called. I'd have to look it up, but it's from I always see the most like insane maps and the most insane places. There's Indie. Do you remember that like furry server?
Yeah, so there's this one server in the server browser went offline a little bit ago that we used to frequent. It had a really misleading name. It was called Furry Roleplay 18 plus only, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't what you. It's not what you think. All right, don't worry.
Yeah, but it was just a facade because it just hosted like these really unknown like quirky maps that like that were like
That's how you keep the shitheads out. Something like that.
exactly. It was pretty smart, but it had a lot of like really cool maps with a lot of aesthetics I've not only not seen in TF2 but not really seen in the source engine
there was
either.
so many crazy maps on there. Like it was literally like I had never seen any of these. I've been playing this game since like 2014. I had never seen any of these maps before. It was
like
actually, I mean, it's sad. It's weird to say, but this like quote unquote 18 plus server was one of the best TF2 servers I ever played on. I was like, what the fuck? Why is it so good?
like most of them were like aimless maps where you just kind of there's a spawn on one end and a spawn on the other end and you just like explore. But a lot of aesthetics there are really unique. Like there was one that was like a city and it had this sort of like outline art style where you can only see the outlines of things. There was like an outline of a building, right? And like the outline of a street lamp. And it almost looked like a drawing, like no matter what angle you looked at it from. So my point is that like with TF2 mapping, there's always like aesthetics wise, there's always something new you can do. And especially when you throw in like stuff like Halloween or Christmas, there's always a lot of potential to do something crazy in you.
With Halloween maps, I've noticed they're either like some of the most like nothing maps where it's just like the same textures, or they're like the most creative maps you'll ever see.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
Sandcastle was like
one
of those unique ones.
They made
so really quick about Sandcastle. I helped a tiny little bit with Sandcastle. There's actually some voices in the background in the ambient sounds of a little girl saying trick or treat, and it's actually my daughter that we recorded, and she's saying trick or treat on the map.
Oh, that's really sweet.
And I also did the when you capture the point, and it's the replacement for the Groot Keep theme. There's the whistling. That's like the ants go marching sound. It's when the gate goes up. That's actually me whistling like 4 different layers.
That's pretty cool.
And my favorite part of that map is when you're parkouring on the burgers.
Yeah. I was watching. I'm good friends with Void, who made that project, and I was watching it like work in progress. I've always been a fan of like rat style maps. It's actually one of the early custom maps, like back with like Counter-Strike 1.6 era kind of stuff. We used to have these rats maps that we'd play, and that really got me interested in custom maps to begin with. So it was really fun to see that style of map come to TF2 so many years later and then watching him build it and watching all like the little behind the scenes stuff that he was sharing every day with it was really, really fun to see it all come together.
I think
I think
we might move on to our next question or
Indeed.
next section now. Then,
Indy, are you
Uh,
lined up?
Indy, do you have anything else to add?
No.
Hello,
Okay,
Indy.
I will say
hello.
I will say one more thing because actually Ramkin in chat brought it up. That aesthetics are really important for people to help them remember a map.
Hmm.
And Ramkin would know because they made Selbian with the seal, and
Oh,
that was
yeah.
a big giant thing this last year.
fucking
We
Jesus, yeah.
we got a legend in the chat. Holy
Legend
shit.
in chat.
Love that map.
So like
Actually,
something
yeah,
like
that's
that
I'm
can
only
really
after
step it up.
I'm only
Okay.
after copping that. Like, I'm not gonna like. I love Selbian. Selbian was really fun to play. But God, do you remember around that time? Every thumbnail was like the seal, the seal.
Even I'm
That
guilty
was
of that.
that was I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that was like that map was like engineered to go viral.
It was
Like,
some solid marketing for sure. That's actually a big thing that I believe in. That sets kind of myself apart from other mappers too. Is like the marketing side of it. I apply that same kind of stuff. Like I have a band that I promote. It's called Bog Wizard. Just plug. It's really important to not just make something and release it and you're done. Part of the whole release process is providing this professional look on the workshop, reaching out to servers, getting any kind of promotion that you can, and that's sort of what I've built myself up around with my YouTube channel this last like decade of doing the tutorials. It's not just for other people; it also helps promote myself. to say how the sausage works behind it, but it's really important to
Let's not
to
forget
put yourself out
podcasts.
there.
Okay, so you're just using us. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. This is
See how
all
it
for
is.
me.
See how it is.
Me.
You guys can latch on a little bit if you want some clout, but this is for me, baby.
I do find it so funny how like Saxon Hale being added to the game was overshadowed by a fat fucking seal. that's peak.
now that we're on the topic of game modes, I do want to ask what's the extent of your knowledge with Vscript stuff? Are you in those
I
trenches?
am absolutely a visual person, and when it comes to programming, I've tried learning over the years. I am atrocious. That is just my brain does not work with just words. I need visuals, and I need sounds, and I need the actual tangible stuff. So programming is not anything I can do at all. I've got people that I rely on. Like I've worked with Lizard of Oz. He did the programming for slime, all the slime monsters, the Salman. He did all the Vscript side of that stuff, and we had like a new like slime effect that was sort of like Girardi or yeah, basically like a Girardi kind of thing. I personally that's way beyond my brain. I can't do it.
So
Wait,
with,
you
like-
were saying like you need visual effects and stuff to code. That's the same with me. That's why I do all my coding in Scratch. So.
Nah, Scratch is actually peak. I don't want to hear it.
And like that's actually why I'm pretty decent with like hammer input output kind of systems because it's a visual thing. It's like I have physical. This is a relay. This is a trigger. This is a door that I can set, and it's visual things for me that I can connect to each other with like wires basically. Like I do sound stuff as well on the side, and like connecting wires from one amplifier to another piece, and then there's my soundboard, and like it's very similar to how you do your input outputs in Hammer almost, and that helps me a lot. That's the only way I could do that stuff.
What about with like the like new game modes being added? Do you think you'd still like work on maps with like new game mode ideas, or would you have to like get like a collab with someone who knows more about like scripting and stuff?
No, I absolutely would. I mean, I'm definitely having to collaborate with other people to help me with those side of things. Every map I work on is usually a huge team project at this point. Because I'm more of a like, I'm not good at certain things. I'm going to bring this person in who's really good at it, and we're going to make a really cool project together. Like I like doing that kind of team building and coming up with these really cool projects together. But then there's also really mundane uses for it too. Like I talked about Yavla, which is my CP payload map. The first stage is control point, the second stage is payload. Before Vscript, that was not possible to do to change the HUD over between rounds. But because now we have Vscript, it's literally like one little command and it just resets the HUD, and now I have payload. It's not exciting, but it's something that was not possible until Vscript. But then there's obviously the really, really big changes like the zombie mode and Vscript Hail. I know there's like a VIP mode getting worked on. There was prop hunt, all that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's really cool that those things are kind of getting worked on and seeing where they're heading. And I would definitely not be opposed to like working on one of those kind of projects at some point.
Yeah.
Well, while we're on that, would you, like in your personal opinion, do you consider like something like prop hunt? There was a big debate about this relatively recently. Should something like prop hunt be added to like vanilla Team Fortress?
I'm not opposed personally. I've always been big on shenanigans and weird stuff in TF2, and I played a ton of prop hunt back in the day. Like when before I was even mapping, we were playing prop hunt maps. I think the pushback against it was a little strange to me, but I understand also people who are trying to keep like a vanilla TF2 kind of feel. At the same time, I think there's a place for both, definitely. And I think a playlist with a bunch of crazy modes and prop hunt and Vscript Hail and VIP and like all these modes that you're not necessarily used to playing and don't quite fit normal TF2, like the zombie mode and stuff like that, that still have the TF2 aesthetics, that still have a lot of the gameplay, but are something dramatically different. I don't see why they couldn't coexist with regular stuff as well.
Well, I do definitely think that TF2 needs like an arcade tab at this point. That's just like stuff like Manpower, Saxton Hale, Zombie Infection, and stuff like that. Because it's not so far removed from TF2 that it's like a different game, but it's not being played because it's shoved all the way to like the depths of the alternative section.
I think it's tough because like Probed, most people don't even know that map. It's in the game. It's been in the game since 2015, but it got put in that miscellaneous section, so it does not get played for the most part.
It sucks. I've been campaigning for there to be some sort of map rotation in TF2. I know people don't like to have their choice, but I think most people's choices are pretty much set these days. So just having like a way to like, give like less played maps the spotlight would be I think would be super peak. But
I think it's really easy to fall into the rotation of playing the same handful of maps, and I don't blame players because they've been playing them for forever. They know them really well. They know they're solid. They know they're fun. It's really, really difficult to break that hurdle to get a custom map or something new played and liked a lot. And finding ways to kind of sneak those in a little bit here and there, I think is almost the way to do it. So it's like, yeah, you played Upward for five rounds in a row. Now let's try something new.
I remember when with the like Vscript game modes, I think what people are like scared of is that like some of them are like kind of like breaking the whole concept of like having 9 classes, having teams, and it's like going so far away from TF2 that it's becoming its own thing. And like I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think with the ones that we've had in so far haven't broken at all. I think the Zombie Infection was good. Each class had their own like unique power they could get when they were a zombie. I thought that was a really well designed game.
I definitely think that's kind of the key to keep it's you got to keep the team in Team Fortress.
Yeah, exactly.
So having those class differences, that's the big dramatic thing that separates TF2 from all these other games, and I think what keeps it fresh is you have 9 different classes that do 9 different things. They're all very well defined. There was so much thought put into that base that we're still playing this game, how many years later.
That's where I think like I'm not gonna delve too deep into negativity, but I do think prop hunt strays a bit too far from that, because even if like all the prop classes like have different abilities, I feel like it's still like strewn like too far away.
I think I don't think it should be just like immediately like tossed aside. I think it could be like if there was like a good pitch for it and like there was a play session, everyone agreed it was like good, then I don't see why not. But I don't think it's impossible to make prop hunt work in TF2.
I could see it as an after round thing, like maybe a payload map, and then when you cap the final point, it like turns the losing team into like props that
I
have to
remember-
like hide.
I remember a lot of people just like lost their like mindset with they just lost their minds about this. But it's like, you know, if you actually like sit down and like try and think about it, there's definitely ways you could make it work. Like it's like people are putting effort into this. Keep in mind, it's like it's not they don't want it to be like arse. They want it to be good. So you know, it's kind of like you got to kind of.
And I
work
think
with
a big thing to keep in mind too with a lot of these like new things that are popping up is that people and see it and they go, "This is what it is. I don't like exactly what it is right now. That means it sucks and it's going to suck forever." So many of these maps and so many of these projects are fluid and changing every single day. And if there's something that you don't like about a Vscript mode that's getting worked on, instead of just gut reaction, "This mode sucks, I hate it," and that's your only response, maybe playtest it and give them feedback. Like everyone is constantly looking for more playtesters, and the scale that you go from, like if you're testing, like I have my own testing server, there's TF2 maps, there's a handful of servers that play custom maps, but you're like maybe 100 people tops that you have on a monthly basis being able to test a map, and that's like very optimistic for map testing. If you're lucky, you get that much testing, and then it gets in game, and suddenly you have hundreds of thousands of people like daily. And it's such a dramatic shift that it's very difficult to I don't really know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
I remember, well, Indy, one game mode, I don't know if this is a Vscript game mode, but one game mode me and Indy really liked, but I don't think we would want it in the game because I think Twitter would actually have a fucking meltdown. Was the TF2 Battle Royale game mode? Do you remember that,
When you hear the words TF2 Battle Royale, your mind immediately goes, "Oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds like it's pandering to like Fortnite players or whatever." But it was made by a TF2 modder called Mikush, yeah, and he made it so like you drop from above on this big like map that's essentially open world, and whatever class you pick, you spawn with no weapons except your fists.
It wasn't that big though. It's like compared
to most maps do not like most games did not last longer than I think 4 to 5 minutes. But basically, you drop down. There's a bunch of crates everywhere, and you have to uncrate your arsenals. So, like you have to crate your primary, secondary, and melee, and you swap them on the fly. And it was a really cool like shake up, which was really fun, and genuinely it was catered to all the classes, and there was no class that was too powerful or too weak. But the thing is,
even
it really
Medic was
takes
good.
It takes the team out of Team Fortress. So,
Yeah.
I never really wanted it in the base game, sadly.
I still think it was
since
fun,
we're in the Vscript portion of this, shout out to Lizard of Oz who's in chat right now. He's responsible for Saxton Hale and
Legend.
Slime and a whole bunch of stuff Vscript related. He's had his hands in.
When they first said that Saxton Hale was coming to like casual, I remember I was really skeptical because I remember playing like the original Saxon Hale in like 2017 or whatever, and I remember it being like really buggy and really glitchy, and then you would get like spawn camp like engineers. But when I played it in like the update, it was actually really good. Like it was really it's clear they put a lot of thought into like making it like fun and making it not last ages. And making it balanced as well.
I genuinely have really like no complaints to Vscript Saxton Hale like gameplay wise. It's done like an incredible job.
I think the only complaints I have towards it have nothing to do with the game mode itself. It has to do with some of the people playing it who like be friendly as Saxton Hale, and it takes like 7 years to play the game.
Rock paper scissors, like shut up.
Come on, I just want to play. It's like the only thing.
That's kind of an issue with any new mode that relies on one person. I kind of see it with like the VIP mode too. That's one of the issues that they're running into is if you rely on one person to do something, and what if that person is less skilled? What if that person is trolling? What if that person is AFK? Like there's a lot of things that can come into play that mess with it, but finding a way to balance that is the challenge.
There's Indy's been playing a lot of TF2 Classic that has VIP in it, and
I like VIP. With TF2 Classic, it definitely helps that it's really easy to swap the VIP, because if your VIP is terrible, you just call the vote and everyone's like, yeah, get this guy out of here, and some other guy's VIP. So I definitely think if you want to make a VIP game mode for regular TF2, I do think talking to the people behind TF2 Classic is the way to go, because they have like locked that down. They've done
See,
it.
I'm kind of torn on VIP. I think it has potential. I'm not like talking bad about the game mode at all. But early on, TF2 turned VIP into payload, because then you just have a cart and you push it, and I think that's like the ultimate distillation of that mode is just payload.
I think payload is better. I've played both, but VIP is kind of fun in its own way.
It has its own experience for sure.
It creates a lot of those really hyped moments where like you like pick off the VIP, like or when if you're like on the attacking team, you're like playing as the VIP and you manage to rally like 8 other people to like protect you.
There
it's
is
definitely a lot of high highs and low lows.
There is something incredibly satisfying about getting like a snipe or like a backstab or like bombing the VIP. Like, I will not lie, and seeing that like 3 minutes fly off the timer. Like, there is a genuine joy to that.
And then you like get crits and you can like sort of snowball off of it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely it's not perfect, but I think that there's definitely potential to be like, and I think it is pretty good on its own. Yeah.
But to kind of like wrap up this section, would you say that like what people have done with Vscript is that kind of do you think that's the peak of what we're kind of at, that peak of what people can do with it?
Oh,
Or do you
absolutely
think
not.
now we've just scratched the surface?
Yeah, like Vscript is really, really new still. And designing whole new like big game modes. Everything that's gotten in so far was pretty like, we worked really hard and really fast to get this in. There's stuff, I know there's a lot of things that are being worked on that's, kind of a little bit quieter, or just, being worked on over time that are going to be more polished up and are going to have some interesting things happen to them. I know Lizard's working on some stuff himself. There's I think over time it's going to become, you're going to get less of like the big stuff like Vscript and Hail, and you're going to get a lot more like, hey, this is something we never thought of, this the last entirety of TF2's history that we could do, and we can do it now. It opened up so many doors for TF2. It's insane. Like I can't quite fathom, like I said earlier in the interview, that limitations kind of can breed creativity, and this opened the door up so wide that it's almost overwhelming, the number of things that can be done now. So for me, as like an older school mapper who I kind of prefer more traditional gameplay, I kind of prefer the older style maps. It's challenging for me to think about it from that whole new perspective, but there's so many new people coming onto the scene all the time, every day. There's dozens of maps basically getting tested every single day from new people. It's exciting to see where that can go in the future, for sure. And I think there's a lot of room for innovative kind of designs.
A lot hinges on mappers, because it's really the last like gameplay thing that TF2 is going to receive for the rest of its life cycle.
Hopefully,
And
I mean, hopefully.
but a lot of people place like really unfair expectations on mappers, and people tend to freak out when things aren't perfect the first go around. But it's definitely, from what I've seen, the mapping community has their head held high, and they're always trying new things, and that's definitely really commendable.
The TF2maps.net community is really, really good for like a new mapper coming into the scene. Anybody can get testing. It's to the point where it's blowing up so much, and there's so many people testing. There's 40-50 maps on the queue for the bot for testing, and every day they're running, trying to chip away at this list, and it might take you like half a week to a week to get tested, but your very first map you ever made, you can get players on it through TF2 Maps, which a lot of other gaming communities that are doing custom stuff like that, like you're in your own little bubbles and you don't have that sort of thing. So it's really cool to see everybody supporting each other in that way, and enabling the community to just keep getting bigger.
I think if I put my first ever TF2 map on there, it's like an empty box of a tree in the middle. And then I gave up.
Yeah, that's how you got to start. And you
gotta start somewhere.
Okay, this sucks. This doesn't play well. Well, now I got past that hurdle. Now I make my next map, and I make
now I need a second trick.
I really need someone of your caliber to take a look at CP Cloak and just fix it up. It shouldn't be too hard.
Yeah, I'll work on it.
Thanks.
Wait, what?
Isn't that the one with like the giant spy?
Oh, where like no, where like all the classes are like giant and
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at you. Definitely like even then like this is like a small point, but the mapping community for TF2 is so expansive that there's like mapping circles for like source mods like Open Fortress and TF2 Classic, where like the whole everything we've just talked about kind of flies out the window because those run completely different game modes with completely different rules, and then you sort of have to have a different skill set for them. So mapping is definitely probably the most expansive like part of our community. With a lot to learn, a lot to master.
I'm very, very involved in the mapping community. I try to be. And there are massive circles of people that I do not know that are getting stuff in, that are making this amazing content for the game, which just tells you the breadth of the community itself. Like there's people from everywhere, and you don't have to necessarily be, in like the in crowds to get noticed or to get your map out there, which is really cool.
Indeed, now that I'm thinking about it, that Battle Royale mode would work a lot better in Open Fortress.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, let's switch. What are the other topics we've got? Indie.
We've only really got.
We're about an hour and 20 minutes in, so I think we've only got time for one more topic.
We got one more topic. This isn't exactly a huge one. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Can you list off some like common mistakes that new mappers make?
I think like gameplay wise, like I said, the big like making a big flat space and then trying to fix it by putting stuff into it is probably the number one thing I see people do. And it's a little bit my tutorial like shows you it's like make a spawn here, make a big open space in the middle, and put a king of the hill point, and now you have a working map. It sucks, but it works. Starting off from that kind of mindset makes you go, okay, well I can expand it and just make a big open area in the middle and put some stuff in it. But you're starting off with a flat base and then you're trying to fix it. So it's like you're working uphill, going from something flat and then trying to add the height variation and the changes. Whereas you could, if you baked that stuff in at the start, you're already starting with the core fundamental things that make a map decent. And I think that helps a lot to actually start with that instead of trying to. It's like making a mistake and then trying to erase it and fix it. You're always going to have the smudges there. If you don't make that mistake early and you start with the height variation and the changes. Which if you even look like the basic maps like Koth Viaduct, the whole thing is a hill, and everything's going uphill until it meets the middle point, and then it kind of goes back downhill, and you've got the height, the buildings in the middle, and things like that. But it started off with that core idea of that height change.
People in chat taking notes.
Beyond that too, I know like the common joke is the diaper skybox. That's more of an optimization thing. It's like
the what?
The diaper skybox they call it. So it's in mapping, the whole map has to be sealed. So you have to have the physical skybox brushes sealing off the map from the outside the void. If you just put a big box around your entire map of skybox, it's hollowed out. It accomplishes that, but it's not a thing that makes the map run well or is very like optimized. It's a mistake a lot of new mappers go because they go, oh, I can just put a box around the whole thing, it's sealed, done, problem solved. But then their compiles take a lot longer and the map just runs like crap. So avoiding that as an early mapper is a really good idea. Try to fit your skybox to the shape of your map and just go vertical with it and where you need for like out of bounds areas and expand from there rather than just making a box and filling it. So that's kind of the same too with like don't make a flat space and fill it. Don't make a big empty skybox and fill it either.
I did not know there were more than one kind of seal in TF2 maps.
I'm trying to think of some maps that are often like called like some of like the most annoying ones to play that are in the game. Like how would you like how would we fix them? Wait. Indy, would you think Alright, should we take Junction for example?
I think Junction it is like I don't think it's mean to dunk on Junction because the creator has very much moved past Junction and created a lot
nothing
better maps and
he's definitely
better
talented.
things. And he's definitely a talented guy. But with Junction, it's a map that was added very early, and it was actually beloved by TF2's early community in like when it was at like 2008. It was beloved in 2008 to the point where Valve themselves said that people just like begged them, sent them emails daily to just add it to the game. Where nowadays it's considered one of the worst maps ever. And it's like, is there any saving Junction? Is there any way to modernize Junction, do you think?
I think it would be tough. I think the big issue with it is just it's so tight, it's so low ceilings, it takes away a lot of that verticality, the ability to jump. There's some big open rooms, but for the most part, it's just funneling you from area to area with narrow little spaces. So I think opening it up would help a lot. Expanding on some of the areas would make it more modern. But I honestly, I don't think it needs it at this point either. It's kind of like trying to dramatically change something so old is just almost like destroying the history of it.
It's like trying to get a car from the 60s to go in NASCAR. Like, you just can't.
And I think you can learn from anything like that. Like, even if you don't like a map, going and seeing what doesn't work. Going, okay, I don't want to make my map have narrow hallways, and I want to make more headroom so jumping classes can jump, and more verticality, and using those kind of things is still beneficial. And the mapper very obviously did use those things. Like any kind of project like that is not a loss or a waste of time. You're still learning from it.
No, absolutely. Nothing against the map creator itself. It's just that I think Junction's just become a bit of a meme just at this point from what I've seen. But it's weird because I think Junction's kind of stuck in this middle zone where it's like, because like a lot of the early TF2 maps were a lot like Junction, where they were like very like closed off, very narrow, but a lot of them still hold up. Like, I still enjoy Dust Bowl now and then. Like, I know it's obviously a flawed map, but I still think there's fun there. It's got a fun gameplay loop.
It definitely didn't reach the like level of like iconicness as like something Turbine did, because I'm gonna be honest, I really do not like Turbine. I don't think that's a controversial opinion,
but there are Turbine lovers.
There are Turbine heads out there, and I think Junction is in an unfortunate place where it's not good enough to hold up on its own merit, but it's also not really iconic enough to coast like Turbine does, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's just like really stuck in that like weird middle zone where it's just kind of like, can we play someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general TF2 maps have opened up a ton over the years, and it's partially just searching for new gameplay ideas. Like, mappers are always constantly trying to push the limits and push new ideas, and I think it's just kind of gradually over time has changed to things being more open. But there's always a balance. Like I said earlier on, those choke points are still important, even if people might complain a little bit about them. If you didn't have them, the map would play worse.
I've got a good thing. What about MVM maps? We haven't talked about them. They're often overlooked.
I am absolutely the worst person to talk about them because I played MVM maybe 5 times in my entire life.
But it's like they do exist. They are there.
Yeah, they're cool. I've been fascinated with the concept and the idea, but I don't personally. I prefer the PvP kind of gameplay over the PvE.
Yeah.
So I never really got into MVM. I will say though, I got to when I was part of the Saxy team, the very last Saxies with Agent Gun Vulcanite. We ended up getting flown out to Valve, and I actually sat down and had lunch with Dave Riller, and we talked about MVM a little bit, and I tried to push him. Looking out for all of my MVM mapping buddies, I was like, "Hey, you guys should think about maybe doing some more with MVM," and he was like, "Yeah, I can't really talk about that." And I was like, "Yeah, that's understandable. That's fine." But I tried.
Let's try. An attempt was made.
That's the business way of saying "fuck off."
No, it's kind of sad with custom MVM maps though, because you don't really see them get as much love as custom TF. I don't think are any of the MVM maps in MANN up community created.
None of the MVM maps are community made, as far as I know.
And there are loads of community MVM maps. Like, what's that one server called?
Community on like potato.tf that has a lot of really fun. Because the thing is, they have a lot of with MVM maps. It's not just the map itself. They have like a really fun variety of robots. One of my favorites is like the mini tanks who like zoom past you, but they have like a little bit of health,
Yeah,
so you
those
gotta
are really
hunt them
funny.
down.
Yeah,
Those are
mini
funny.
tanks.
Yeah,
There was one I
love.
seen that had an airship. Do you remember that, Indy?
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
The-
So like MVM has so much potential for like mapping and like custom stuff, especially now with Vscript. It's genuinely like we've barely scratched the surface of in
Yeah.
like the vanilla TF2 on what you can do with MVM, which is a major shame because I think a MVM only update could be filled at this point with like 30 new maps that would all be like banger.
MVM could it could take just like everything from the community. It could get a major update. Honestly, add some like
Genuinely.
silver weapons and a new tour, and there you go.
I think that's another good example too of like a whole nother side of the TF2 mapping community that I don't interact with that side of it at all, but it's a huge thriving community of people making a bunch of really, really cool stuff.
And there's also like the source mod mapping as well. What about SFM maps? Are like I don't know.
I think that's more like scene building with SFM.
Yeah, that's more like scene building.
Yeah, but with source mods, I do. I know you're a very busy person, but I do think you should really check out mapping inside Open Fortress because it's Open Fortress's map design is like completely different to TF2, where it's like there's no spawn. Like that's like one of the biggest differences.
There's multiple spawns.
Well, yeah, there's spawns that aren't like marked on the map or anything, and it's definitely a lot of the whimsy that I felt when like first playing TF2 I re-experienced in Open Fortress because it forces you to sort of completely change your like mentality on what you expect from a map, and I have no doubt that the creators behind those maps face their own like unique sets of challenges.
And then that's like another example, just like a huge community. I think part of it is as I'm getting older and I have less time, like I've got my daughter and I've got, every other million projects and, that I'm doing. It's really difficult for me to sit down and want to dedicate a bunch of time to another game, basically. It's really, really challenging to find that time.
I'd imagine. I think they've got their own mapping team, Open Fortress, anyway.
Yeah, and those guys do a lot of great work.
No, a lot of their maps are brilliant. Like honestly,
I think
it does look really cool from what I've seen.
The mapping community, as we said, it is the most expansive part of TF2. It just keeps going.
Thames and Control are actually like genuinely like brilliantly made maps.
Hardy, you live in the fucking country. How do you pronounce it wrong? Like?
Now, what is it then?
Thames.
Thameslink. Oh, right. It's like but no,
it's okay.
Those are. It's okay. They even created like I'm gonna bring this up again with the fucking custom plug sockets for the UK map. Like that is an intense.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
That is an intense level of detail you're reaching, like getting the fucking plugs right.
I can definitely vibe with that kind of idea for sure. That's amazing.
No, it's great. Honestly.
Any more common mistakes you have for us, sir? Will we trudge into uncommon, rare, and legendary mistakes?
I think the big one is people giving up too soon. You make your first map, it's gonna suck. No matter what, your first map will absolutely be the worst map you ever make. The good part about that, the good news, is that it's all uphill from there. If you keep going, if you do your first test and people are like, wow, this is terrible, you don't know what you're doing. Generally, people try to be more polite than that, but that's the kind of feeling. That's the feeling you get from it. It's really hard to put yourself out there. It's a little piece of your creativity that you put out there, and you find out it's just the worst thing someone has ever played. It can be a hit to the ego, and it sucks. But knowing how to keep going forward is a big challenge, and I think it's a very common mistake to go, well, I tried, it didn't work, I give up. Taking that project and iterating it until you can't learn anything more from it, and then you scrap it and you start with a new project, and then you repeat that cycle. That's all I did. My first map was absolutely horrible. It was a 5 CP. It was called CP Oubliette, which I peaked really early with my map names. That's probably the best map name I've ever come up with. But it was a 5 CP map, and the spawns were on both sides. You were connected, so you could see through like a grid wall the opposing team, and there were no forward spawns at all. and you just had to push to middle, and it was this big push back and forth, and it was just super high up, and the map played horribly. It was a room, and there was corridors, and there was a room, and there's corridors, and it had all the common first mapper mistakes. But I took that and went, okay, now I know not to make a map like that. I'm going to make my next map, and I learned from there. And each project, I kind of focused on something else. Like, okay, this map, I want to start learning about displacements a little bit more and how to make like the rough terrain, the cliffs, and the rough ground. I want to work on learning that as well as the gameplay. So then I focused on that, and then that map didn't play that good because it was only my second map. So then I moved on from there, and it was just a constant iterative process of making something, failing, making it better, moving on to your next project with everything you learned, and eventually you stop sucking. That's 100%. It's anything creative, anything where you're putting yourself out there, doing something creative, music, art, mapping, game design. You have to start from somewhere, and keeping going and keeping pushing through the parts that are hard and the parts that make you feel like you have no idea what you're doing is the biggest challenge. And that's what separates the people who succeed and who don't.
That was what I was going to say. I was literally going to say, like, it's not just about mapping. Like, our first podcast, Indy, you can back me up, probably wasn't the best.
Disaster.
Disaster. We had no idea what we were talking about. Probably, I think me and Indy's first videos, if you watch them now, embarrassing.
Yeah,
my first SFM, I didn't even know how to rotate the arms. I had to I just stretch them across each other, and their like shoulders flying off their stretched out, looking terrible. It's like the first thing you do of everything is always going to be a bit shit.
But before you're good at something, you have to suck at it. So
yeah, but it's like I think the quicker you realize that was shit, and then you just like try and improve and like notice what you're doing wrong.
Definitely
the worst. It's the classic adventure time.
The worst thing you can do is think you're good when you're not, like when you're first starting out. Like what's it called? The
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah. Like the less qualified you are, the more think you know, and it's like, don't catch yourself in that.
Yeah, it's absolutely like the old Adventure Time quote. It's sucking at something is the first step of becoming sort of good. Like, it's 100% that. Everything you're doing is, it's going to suck at first, but eventually if you keep going and you keep pushing through and you try to learn and you try to make the next thing better, you're going to eventually get at least decent at it.
Exactly. I imagine everyone who played TF2 for the first time was probably shit ass.
That's more to do with TF2's fucking learning curve, especially nowadays. But
I guess
trying to learn it now. At least I started off before there was payload and before it was like simple.
I started just after Jungle Inferno, so I got the fucking brunt, I was in the trenches trying to learn this shit, trying to remember what all the weapons do.
No, it's funny because when I first played TF2 for the first time, I think it was like in 2013. I think I played one game of, I don't remember what map it was. It was a payload map, but I was like completely no. I remember it was Badwater last, and I kept dying as sniper, and I was like, this game stinks, and I was like 11 years old. Then 2 years later, I still had the game installed, and I had a friend from school, and her little brother invited me to play TF2. I was like, okay, sure. And it was on a trade Minecraft server, and then everyone was like speaking, and everyone was really friendly, and then just me like talking to everyone and like farming kills. I'm like, because everyone else is like really new to the game, you could tell. Just like I'm like farming kills on like really new players. Like that was like the like training ground they really needed to like give me the push to get into TF2, and then
I think for me, TF2 was always like a social game. It wasn't about being the best on the server, especially like the early days of community servers where, like I said, I was from like the Penny Arcade server community. We had the same people playing, and it was almost every Friday for like 10 years. It was the same, mostly the same circle of people. We played on a lot of Fridays, and we'd have drinks and, just shoot the shit and have fun together. And a lot of those are really tangible, like fun memories that I had of just, hanging out with my friends. And there's people that I met that I still talk to, pretty regularly from those days. And that's kind of what kept me going with TF2 more than the gameplay and more than the trying to be the best on the server kind of thing. It was just goofing around and having drinks and learning how to navigate a new map when you're hammered, 4 drinks in, and it was good times.
Andy, can we bring back the analogy, the chat room with guns? Can we say it for like the 15th
Sam
time?
hates it.
No, fuck off.
It
Shut
is!
the fuck
TF2
up.
is a chat room with guns!
Like, I'm sorry to say, Sam, but it is the perfect way to describe
That
it.
is how-
This
that
is your brain rot on trade Minecraft. Like,
Nah, this is how we describe TF2. We say it's like TF2. The beauty of TF2 is that it is a chat room with guns. We say it's like every episode. But
That is the way I play TF2.
Yeah, that is the way I play
It
TF2.
definitely can be, and I think there's definitely a circle of the community of TF2 that treats it that way, and then there's also a circle of the TF2 that treats it as it is purely a game. We're trying to top the server. We're trying to, win every round. Whereas I don't care if I lose most of the time. I'm just trying to have fun.
I think there's a place for both of them. Like TF2
Yeah,
is
It-
like, it
it's
happens to
awesome
also
that
be
we
a
can coexist.
it happens
That I
to
can coexist with Sam.
it happens to also be a super fun like competitive game as well. Like who would have thought? So yeah, it's like TF2 is just one of those games where it like ticks the boxes for so many people, which is probably why it's lasted for so long.
We should start wrapping up.
Fuck!
Yeah. So if you have any questions for Mr. Crash here, send them in chat. We will put him on the spot live, but you don't have long. Just
He will
ask
embarrass himself
now.
in front of everyone.
Exactly.
we
I will
already
judge
have
you for your question.
we do have one question. The first one is by Nuz.274 asks how to reach out to other mappers on collaborating on a map.
I think it's a very social dynamic. It's like any kind of job. You're kind of interviewing for it, and unless it's people you're really good friends with, you need to prove yourself first. You need to have something tangible. You need to have released a couple maps at least that play well, look decent. You kind of have to do everything for yourself a little bit to start off, and then having proven yourself to be able to make a good project and be able to put this stuff together, then you can draw in people, say, hey, here's what I've done in the past. Here's what I want to do. Do you want to jump in on this? Do you want like a modeler? Like I want some custom props for this. Here's what I'm thinking. It helps having like the layout already done. For me now, it's like I can gather people up because I've had this track record for a long time of being able to make a map, test a map, iterate a map, and actually get it to final. And a lot of people can't get that far, so it's really hard to tell someone, oh no, this time I swear I'm going to do it this time. I just need you to commit like, dozens, if not hundreds of hours yourself into this project when you haven't proven yourself already to begin with. And I think getting to that step and making those networking connections is like the number one thing.
I've got a question. How often do you think people draw concept art for a map before they make it?
It's becoming more common, honestly. I know a few artists. Like I've had like my buddy Square. We worked together on Slime and Brine, both versions of the map. And he started off with some concept. He approached me about the idea that he had for the salmon monsters.
Oh yeah.
And he had concept art for that. That was sort of the initial base. We're working on one, my CP payload map, Yavla. I'm working with DJB. They had some like base kind of concept art and the idea for the map, which the Swedish village of Yavla, which they burn the goat down every year. It's like a big tradition. And that being a payload map where you're trying to push a torch to go burn this goat down just is an incredible idea for a TF2 map. So I think having that helps.
Yeah, I can get behind that. That sounds cool as fuck.
We've got one in the chat that says, where's it gone? What map should newer mappers take inspiration from?
All of them. Every single one you've ever looked at, you should be taking some kind of inspiration, influence from, because every map you've played it and gone, this map sucks, or this map is fun, or this map is okay. Well, you have some variance there, but in general, you have an opinion on the map. So now you can step back and go, okay, what makes this map not good? What makes this map good? What do I like about this? You're not necessarily mapping for everybody else. You're mapping for yourself first. You want to make the map that you want to play on and that you like. So for the first step of that is identifying what maps you like and what parts of those maps that you like, and why. And I'm personally more of an old school mapper. I prefer the earlier styles more than the really open kind of stuff that's been more modern. But I try to find a mix of it. So like I'll look at Dust Bowl for some ideas, or I'll look at like some references to earlier maps. But at the same time, I'm still thinking about everything that's come since and what I've learned from playing those maps. So I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but literally everything you've ever played, you should be taking inspiration from.
Even Junction?
Yes.
You could definitely take inspiration from
Right?
Junction.
Did you not listen to? Because you can point out what's bad
There was
about
a whole
Junction and
section where we
learn
talked
from
about
that.
Junction. I don't know if you were there, but we.
Sorry, but as soon as I hear the word every map, words every map, I just go to Junction and I just get lost. You know me.
in these
There's-
fucking
that-
zoned out.
There's some maps that I played on community servers that I don't even know if they're barely maps. Like India. Okay, I'm thinking of the ones where it's just like it's like a massive, just like
What, like
series.
Trade Portal?
No, not trade pool. No, it's like a massive series of rooms, right? Of just like memes scattered all across the walls, and it's like barely even
Oh,
like, a
yeah.
fighting map. Like you can literally just do that as like your first map. You could just make like a hangout spot for your friends, and then like host it on a server. And just put those
Like if that's gonna get you to finish a map, I assume like you
Go
know
for it.
start with that.
go for it.
There is an area in game on Double Frost, which I made the snowy reskin of Double Cross. There is a room up at the top that is entirely filled with pictures of my cats and another cat of somebody who helped with the project.
Aw.
And there's references to Trainsaw Laser. There's a logo of my band. There's like all this stuff thrown up in this Easter egg room. I did that after I found out that Valve wanted it, but I needed a break, like a mental break, to just do something stupid. So I was like, I'm gonna make a big old Easter egg area and put pictures of my cats in it. And like, sometimes you need those things.
And there's in Pier. There's the secret room in the blue spawn with the disco room, and there's like and there's like a German star reference with Banana Land.
And recent one was Galeria. I think it's
Gallery.
called the Galleria. It has like the creator's cat oil painted and then like blue spawn. It's so funny.
That map is so cool just for the amount of like posters they made, like for the.
Oh yeah, that took a lot of work.
That was probably my
Yeah,
favorite.
that was
map
a
ever.
really, really amazing reskin for sure.
I remember
that's a
when
whole
it
other
came
level.
out. When it came out, Zell and I we just went in Gmod and we just looked at all the details for like 30 minutes before we even started playing it.
Is that map supposed to be a reskin of Nucleus?
Yeah,
I didn't even know that. It was like it barely feels like a
That
reskin.
tells you it's a good reskin if you
Yeah,
didn't even know.
exactly. Like I didn't even know.
I didn't actually get a chance to play that map because I wasn't playing TF2 at that time because
TF2 podcaster, by the way.
hold on, the game has gone to fucking shit. Let's not, this is no secret. But I'm sure when the next update comes out, I'll give it another chance again. I'm still very much in the TF2 community. I've fucking.
He's holding on by a thread.
We all come and go, but we always come back.
We always,
That's
you
true.
never-
we
you never
always come
quit.
back.
You
As
just die.
what's his name from fucking Five Nights at Freddy's?
Moving on, Damon is saying that you put loss in one of your maps. Is that true?
So on Shore Leave, there's this like really kind of iconic bar area. And then there's the back behind the bar, there's all the bottles, and all the bottles are Easter eggs of everybody who contributed to the map. So like each bottle's label has like there's like UEAK Crash vodka and like like all those there's references to all of us, and somebody went through and just came up with kind of funny ideas for everybody. But in the very center of it, the bottles are tipped over to form the shape of the loss meme. And then just to really sell it, I put the classic like painted patch right behind just that section of it in the bar. So really like, I want you to look at this. I like getting away with doing stupid things in my maps. That's a big hobby of mine.
Or showing support as well. There was a recent one, Tran S. Wright, showing support for the minorities out there.
that was cool.
That was cool. I like that.
Ramkin asks a question saying, how does a map do good marketing? What counts as good marketing?
Well, once again, Ramkin's the person who came up with the seal on Selbian, so I'm not sure why I'm being asked here. But...
Hey, that's the guy.
Yeah. A big ass motherfucker in there. You don't.
I think that's a really good example of you don't want to necessarily chase what has already worked. That's a good example of something that kind of naturally popped up on its own, like they put they put this animal in there, put a big focus on it in the marketing and the workshop push. And then right after that map got in and it blew up, a lot of people were trying to include animals in their maps and trying to make the big focus like this the creature that they put in. But that's chasing a trend versus setting a trend. It's really difficult to obviously to come up with something unique like that and have it take off. That's a huge outlier. But doing something new and putting a really good like polish on the presentation of it is super important. Even if it's your first big release, you've made a bunch of maps, but this is the first time putting something on the workshop. Looking at the other maps, getting somebody to maybe do a paint over on your thumbnail, giving it a nice border, coming up with a nice logo, and taking good screenshots. All those things contribute to a nice presentation on the workshop. Because if you just put a map on there, the thumbnail's a screenshot of some corner that's not interesting.
Just the corner.
Yeah, it's a ceiling. The screenshots themselves are all like not.
I've seen some screen that is just the skybox and it isn't even like a skybox thing. It's like a default TF2's skybox.
Yeah, and there's a lot of artistry to that. It's a whole nother thing to learn, and that's kind of why, like in the past, like when I worked on Devil Cross, which was my Halloween reskin of Double Cross, I brought somebody in to do a paint over of the thumbnail and make a logo and help me with that polish because it's not something that I'm necessarily really good at making those kind of assets, but I know people who are, and I know people who want to help out. So in that kind of sense, it's playing to your strengths and knowing your limitations is really helpful. And then bringing some other people in. There's tons of artists out there who want to help out, and if you have a good project that's nice and polished, and you want somebody to help you, I'm sure you could find somebody.
Wasn't sorry. Wasn't Mappers partly responsible for the summer update because they were like sick of having to do like Halloween or like Christmas maps?
So that was actually me.
Was that you?
Yeah.
It was you.
I've been thinking about it for a while, and I ended up putting together this open letter to Valve that was saying, hey, while we appreciate the constant steady maps going in for Halloween and Christmas, it's getting a little dry only having those. It's limiting us to only winter or Halloween themes. It didn't feel worth it to work on anything outside of those things if you wanted to actually get something played in game on a big scale and have potentially get something in. So there's a long time that people were only making either Halloween or Christmas maps. So I put this letter together and I got a whole bunch of people to sign it, a bunch of notable names in the community. A lot of people who've had stuff in, a lot of workshoppers, a lot of YouTubers. And we sent it off to Valve, and then they announced very, very shortly after that they were doing a summer update. And that was, I heard secondhand from somebody who had been in contact with Valve that was the thing that pushed them over the edge to do the summer update, which is cool. They'd been thinking about changing up the formula a little bit, but I guess that was like, oh, the mappers in the community obviously really, really want this, so we're going to do it. It was really nice to see that kind of change end up happening, and since then we've had an explosion in different kinds of maps and people making more traditional style projects instead of just doing the same Halloween and Christmas, kind of racking your brain to come up with something unique.
Do you have any more not demands, but things you'd like Valve to do?
Oh God, there's so many.
It's doable. Like how
Reasonable,
the summer update was reasonable.
I got like a smaller scale. Like obviously the big one is like the bot problem, and just in general, I think it would be nice to see more focus put on community servers that are testing maps, and more focus put on outside of just quick play. But obviously that is not or matchmaking. That's not really something that's probably going to end up happening at this point, unfortunately. I think they've been doing really good supporting mappers lately. It's not that difficult to get a hold of Eric Smith and send him a message saying, hey, I have this issue. I would really like to have this entity in the game or whatever like that. He's usually willing to listen and usually pretty responsive for mappers. Yeah, probably the Lizard of Oz suggested in chat like some MVM stuff. Like even though I'm not involved in MVM, I think that would be a huge boost to the game to just do a little throw him a little treat.
something,
Fi-
just one
finally
thing.
finally get those like 2000 Tor like addicts, like something new.
Just something.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's like 20 game-breaking like bugs in like in like MVM. Like I think half the upgrades don't actually work properly. I might be wrong though.
Yeah, let's see if we have any more questions. We should wrap up. What is your Sonic fan 535 asks? What are Crash's thoughts on Source 2 mapping? Not really sure what that means.
So like Source 2 is like the new CS2 kind of stuff. It's the whole new engine, Half-Life Alyx, all the modern Source stuff. It's really scary. I'm old. I can't learn stuff that easy anymore. It looks exciting and it looks like fun. I just have a hard time wanting to push myself to learning a whole new program and a whole new learning a whole new way of mapping.
It's not Hammer?
It's Hammer 2.
Have you sneaked a look in Hammer 2?
I've looked at it. I've seen some other people working on it. I haven't like opened it myself and tried to mess with it. But it looks really nice. It looks like a nice modern take on level design tools without being, like I said earlier, the Unreal Engine and the Unity kind of tools are not that great for iterative changes, whereas the Hammer 2 and Source 2 seem to be a nice modern take while keeping those nice iterative features as well. So I think it looks really cool. I would love to mess with it sometime. I just have not yet had the energy or the mental space to try to learn something brand new like that when I can grind on stuff I know how to do.
that doesn't affect like Hammer 2. That doesn't really affect like TF2 like maps, does it? 'Cause that's like a different engine.
Yeah, it's an entirely different engine. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, and I'm sure they started with it as a base. But no, I can't make TF2 maps with Hammer 2 or using the Source 2 engine at all.
I guess there'll be like CS:GO, CS2 mappers. I guess they'll have to like learn an entire new program now.
Yep. And I know I've seen some people work with like the VR Source 2 stuff, like Half-Life Alyx was all Source 2. My buddy Void, who did Sandcastle and a bunch of other really cool maps that are in the game, he did some experiments with that too, as kind of just some fun projects to work on and have some portfolio fodder, essentially. And they looked really cool, and it's very, very pretty, detailed maps. And it'd be fun. It'd be fun to work on, but I don't think I'm quite there yet for wanting to make the big jump.
I've not. The thing is with Source 2 stuff, there's like Source 2 SFM now as well, but it's like there's not really a reason to switch to it because first off, the workshop is like not compatible with it at all. Second off, you have to port a lot of the stuff from older like Source games into that. And then
a lot of the lighting is a lot different than TF2 lighting that people are used to.
It's like you can make the switch, but everything just becomes a lot more of a hassle to do. That it's just like right now, as it is, it's just better to stick with like Source 1 until there's like more tools and easier ways to port stuff, you know. But yeah, I still think I don't think Source holds up today, which is cool. Like SFM, and people are still doing crazy shit with this like decade-old program to this day, and it's just mental.
Oh, for sure.
It's just, yeah.
So,
I think there's a lot of jank to it, and I'm hopeful, having seen some of the stuff kind of getting worked on and some of the hints at things. I'm hopeful for the future of things being a little bit more optimized. I think the Source engine in general, just the fact that it's can't do multi-threaded processing is holding so much back. And in general, it's like computers are getting better, and this old game is still having a hard time running to modern standards because of the engine. It's, you know, we should be able to push things more than we can, but the engine prevents us from doing so. So it'd be really nice if in the future we could get some fixes to that, make things run a little bit better. That's kind of like the 64-bit potentiality happening here. Could be part of that.
There's a beta that got released, but I don't. It's planned to be added, but but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of quality of life things that would help mappers and help players playing these custom maps that has potential for the future. So I'm excited for seeing some of that stuff to finally get implemented.
Ramkin chat like jokingly mentioned there being a Selpian 2. And I'm not gonna lie, when Selbian came out and like blew up on the internet, I thought that from now on we're gonna see a new trend of TF2 maps where it's a marketable animal objective, and then you must defend it. And I'm glad that didn't happen, because I think with Selbian, I think it's basically peaked. it's the peak of that idea.
I think if they had a giraffe or like a bear animal, I think it's just like, all right, we get it. You know what I mean?
Get like a giraffe helps you reach higher areas.
Okay, wait, maybe if that was what's happening, then maybe that could be rideable mounts like paladins.
Mikush, the modder who made the battle royale thing, he made drivable vehicles. Can we get like a Ford Focus?
No, he did. They were like actual real life cars. They weren't even like cartoony cars. It was literally just like a fucking like Mini Cooper. Like engineer gets in and starts driving.
Engineer gets in the Mini Cooper.
Upgrades it to a Ford Focus.
Now we're talking.
Peak.
Yeah, you should mention. You should message me about that later. I think we can. I think we got an idea there.
Okay, we need to get cooking in the lab.
Yeah.
A giraffe and rideable vehicles. That's what I'm getting out of this.
Exactly.
PL
it's what everyone wants. PL giraffe. You step on its neck and it like springs you up.
Car.
Giraffe, rideable giraffe.
Oh, that'd be so good.
I think we've hit the end in there. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not. One more question by News.274. He's really cutting it close here. If Q&A is still going, are there any newer maps that you've play tested that you've enjoyed so far? So I think he means like things that aren't like released or something like that.
I usually anticipate this question. I'm so bad with map names that I tried to put together like a small list of stuff that I've seen recently. Actually, Lizard's mentioning it too. There's I just recently tested for the first time CTF Monkey Knot, which, speaking of animals in a map, the flag is actually Poopy Joe, and you pick him up and you're trying to take him to the other side. But if you drop him, he'll start walking back to his original base, which is a Vscript kind of feature. That I think that's a fun way to introduce the animal.
Yeah.
How did you bring him back to life?
It must be a
He
prequel.
dead.
You have to ask them how that lore works.
Yeah.
But no, I've seen recently we've been play testing. I have my own testing server. We usually do almost every Friday night. We test some of my maps, and I try to bring in some other community maps that are works in progress. Recently I've seen like Odyssey by Defcon, same person who did Phoenix last year. It's a payload map, kind of like a Greek styled theme, and it's got like the giant saw at the very end. Like when I say giant, I mean like that huge like earth moving kind of saw.
Oh damn.
It has that, and it slowly comes down on top of the payload cart, and that's the finale of it. I've seen a bunch like CP Baxter is another good one by Nessman. We've been playtesting that one a lot. It's a lot of fun. CTF Applejack, we're actually going to be testing. I think we're testing all three of these tonight, is partially why they're on my mind. That's another really cool. I'm not a huge CTF fan, to be honest, but it's another one that's actually pretty solid. Oh god, what else is there? I got off my list already. That's all I got. I'm sorry. That's been a lot of it. There's a lot of cool stuff getting worked on Vscript wise. I know Lizard of Oz is helping with like the VIP modes. We've been helping playtest that. New VSH map where Saxton's a giant robot.
Oh, that sounds quite cool.
That one's looking pretty cool.
Like laser eyes.
I need to say it somewhere. I saw a new Saxon Hale like winter map. Why does he have a coat on? Like, can he please just stay shirtless? Like, come on, guys.
It's chilly. Cool. It's chilly.
Let the nips show.
Exactly. He gets it.
My gaydar is going off the charts right now.
Let the nips be free.
Just let him rock it out. Come on.
Exactly. I think that's about it. Question wise from the chat. This is the boring part of the show where I say, We are Swishcast. We're a TF2 podcast. We're also on Spotify if you want to listen to that. We have
we
like
on Spotify now?
Read
Yeah,
Man Magazine.
yeah, we're on, I've been putting our episodes on Spotify. Some things are a work in progress still, but if you cannot bear listening to us on YouTube, there is also Spotify now. Yeah, we're a TF2 podcast. We're a year strong now, a year full of, I think we're over 30 episodes. So if you're itching for stuff to listen to while you're mapping, there's definitely things in there for you. And yeah, we're also part of MANN magazine, which is a monthly Team Fortress 2 magazine. You might have seen them on Twitter.
We got a page every month.
Exactly. We as a part of MANN magazine, we have a map of the month section we do every month where we well, I say we, but like other people in the MANN magazine team try to highlight some really cool maps from the mapping community every month. And
actually, Overgrown, my map Overgrown just got featured in the latest issue.
Exactly.
there you go.
So,
So if you
Shout
want
out
to
to that.
see more mapping stuff, we got you covered. And I think that's about it from us. If you want to plug anything, Crash, or say anything for the end.
I did think of one more map that I should definitely mention because it's something we talked about. My Mr. Miyagi, Hey You, CP Sandswept. He's been working on. He's hoping to have it ready for summer this year. We've been testing it a bunch. It's a really solid control point map that is turning out really cool, and it has some really cool visuals to it. So highly recommend checking out that one too and waiting for it on the workshop. But for myself, follow me. I'm UEAK Crash on literally everything: YouTube, Twitter. I guess probably
Reddit.
Yeah, Reddit. I am. Yeah, you can find me on there having bad opinions.
Hurrah!
Check me out on those if you want to learn how to get into TF2 mapping. My tutorial series is a great place to start. TF2 Maps is also a great resource for that. You can get testing. If you're not part of my Discord server yet, you can also join that, which I send out announcements whenever we do testing, which is most Friday nights. I do have my own server now that we've been running pretty regularly. We're testing projects on, and I try to bring in other people's maps and test my own, and we've been doing a full server just about every Friday and sometimes during the week too. I also have my band. If you're into heavy metal music at all, we didn't really talk about that, but that's not what this podcast is for.
Do you have anything more Weezer-ish?
No.
Wow.
Shut down.
It's called Log Wizard. We're also on Spotify and all other major streaming services. We're hoping to do some touring around the East Coast of the U.S. eventually here soon. Hopefully this year. We got lots of merch and cool stuff on there for that.
Weezer's also touring this year, so I think you have some stiff competition.
Yeah, I'll try to like grab a little scrap of attention from them, but I'll do my best. But yeah, that's probably about it. If you want to keep up with my maps and all that, follow me on the workshop is good. Go vote for all my stuff. That also helps. If you want to see good maps get in the game, go help test maps, either TF2 Maps or my server. Go help test maps, give good feedback, help mappers because we're all in it together.
We're all in this together, as we know. We go stand, man, a map.
He don't even know the song.
I ain't seen that movie.
He's not a true fan. Right. That's about it then.
How do we end? Now we come to the hardest part.
That's what I like to do. I just say, okay, I'm done.
How do we end the stream?
Huh?
I say we
so
end.
Just fucking cut the
No,
stream. We've ruined it. We've ruined it now.
No, I say we put all the pressure on Sam. Okay, it's Sam. You have to end today's podcast in the form of a haiku. All right, go.
Thanks for watching us. This has been a great time now.
Yeah, keep going.
I'm gonna shoot myself.
It's alright, Sam. We're here for you.